Judge tried to strip her Medal of Honor. Then a Navy admiral walked in and shocked everyone. Welcome back to Silent Heroes. This channel never forgets anyone's bravery, and today's story will make your heart pound and your mind race. Don't blink, because what you are about to witness is beyond shocking. Morgan Steele sat in the third row of the county courthouse gallery, her posture impeccable, her hands folded neatly in her lap. The courtroom smelled faintly of varnish and fear. Fear not for themselves, but for the raw tension radiating from the man seated at the bench, Judge Harrison Cole. A man whose authority, polished and brittle, could crumble under the weight of truth, and yet here he was, convinced of his own invincibility. "Ma'am, I must insist you remove that accessory," Judge Cole barked, his gavel striking the polished wood with a sharp crack that echoed through the room like gunfire. "Court decorum does not allow unauthorized decorations." Morgan didn't flinch. She didn't shift. The young sailor in the defendant's box, Peterson, a 19-year-old with more courage than money, more fear than years, looked back at her for guidance. Morgan's gaze softened for a fraction of a second, but the fire behind her eyes never wavered. The object resting against her navy blue blouse wasn't a necklace. It was the Medal of Honor, a 5-pointed star gleaming gold with a blue ribbon dotted with white stars, worn with the dignity of decades of sacrifice. Each scratch, each dent was a story, each gleam a testament. The medal was a chronicle of life, loss, and unimaginable courage. "Did you hear me?" Judge Cole pressed, his voice rising, cracking like dry wood in a fire. "Remove it or you will be removed." The court's bailiff, a hulking man with the build of a linebacker and the patience of a saint, hesitated. He could see the medal now in its full glory, catching the sterile fluorescent light, the edges sharp, the weight absolute. Something inside him clenched. Professional instinct warred with innate respect. This wasn't just a piece of metal. Morgan finally spoke, her voice calm, steady, resonating through the chamber. "Your Honor, it is authorized." The words were soft, but they landed like cannon fire. The judge's face twisted, veins pulsing on his temple. "Authorized by whom?" he demanded, every syllable dripping with indignation. "I am the authority in this courtroom, and I say it is not." Morgan's lips curved ever so slightly, a faint, knowing smile. "By the United States of America, sir." The courtroom held its breath. The young sailor, Peterson, swallowed hard. He knew who she was, what she represented. He had seen her in photos at the local Veterans Center, tall, unwavering, a legend of courage in the military community. And now here she was, facing down a judge who mistook ceremonial ignorance for authority. "Order the removal," Judge Cole barked, his gavel rapping again. The bailiff's hand hovered over her shoulder. Morgan didn't flinch. She would not surrender this symbol, this sacred proof of lives saved and debts paid in blood, to petty ignorance. And then the world shifted. For a fleeting moment, the sterile courtroom became a battlefield. The faint hum of the air conditioner transformed into the whine of incoming mortars. The varnished oak benches turned to dusty cover. Morgan felt the weight of the metal against her chest, not just metal, but the weight of Lance Corporal Daniels from Ohio, of Sergeant Hill pinned down under enemy fire, of 4 Marines saved because she had run into the kill zone without hesitation. She could see it all, the smoke, the chaos, the red clay of Afghanistan's Helmand River Valley sticking to her gloves as she applied tourniquets, dragging men to cover while bullets shredded the air around her. She could hear the rotor wash of medevac helicopters lifting wounded to safety. She could feel the phantom pain in her shoulder where shrapnel had ripped through her uniform. And yet, here, in a carpeted courtroom, under flickering fluorescent lights, a man dared to call it a trinket. The bailiff's hand trembled. Professional duty screamed one way. The gravity of Morgan Steele's presence screamed another. He stepped forward, hesitant, uncertain. "Ma'am, please don't make this difficult." Morgan's eyes met his. A flicker of empathy, a glimmer of understanding passed between them. just doing your job," she said softly. "I understand." The judge's face contorted. "I will have you removed if necessary. Contempt of court," he thundered. The gavel slammed down, echoing like a shot. Every head turned. The room was suffocating with tension. And then Morgan thought not of the courtroom, but of the men she had carried to safety. She remembered their fear, their prayers, their whispered thanks. She remembered the sting of shrapnel, the searing heat of explosions, the deafening roar of gunfire. Every life saved, every sacrifice, every moment of courage was stitched into that metal. And now, a man who had never faced a battlefield dared to strip her of it. The bailiff reached for her. Morgan leaned slightly back, her eyes cold steel. She would not participate in its dishonor. If they wanted it, they would have to take it from her lifeless fingers. Judge Cole, red-faced and furious, pointed his finger. "You will surrender that unauthorized decoration or face further charges." "Unauthorized," Morgan whispered under her breath, and in that single word she saw a battlefield, a team pinned under fire, the cost of every life saved flashing before her eyes.
Peterson finally spoke, his voice cracking. "Your Honor, stop. You don't know who she is." The judge roared, banged the gavel, tried to assert control, but the first cracks of doubt had appeared. The courtroom, once just a place of mundane rules and petty orders, now trembled with the weight of unacknowledged heroism. Morgan's mind drifted, as if time had slowed. She could feel the adrenaline from that day in the Helmand Valley surging through her veins. 3 Marines critically wounded, machine gun fire everywhere. She had left cover without hesitation, shielding one with her body while applying a tourniquet, dragging another to safety, returning under fire again and again. Her shoulder wound pulsed, but she ignored it. Her life had never been hers alone. And now, in this moment, she realized that the battlefield had moved indoors, and the fight for respect, for recognition, for honor had just begun. The bailiff froze, the weight of her history pressing down like artillery fire. Judge Cole, oblivious, raged on, not understanding that he was attempting to assault not just a person, but the very legacy of courage embodied in that medal. Every detail of the medal came alive, the anchor at the center, a reminder of those who had gone before her. The laurel wreath, a symbol of victory against impossible odds, the pale blue ribbon, representing valor in the face of death. It wasn't a piece of jewelry, it was a living memory. And in that instant, the first twist of fate arrived. The courtroom, for everyone present, was no longer merely a courtroom. It was a lens, focusing every injustice, every act of courage, every failure of understanding into a single crystalline moment. The stakes were no longer petty rules. They were life, death, and honor. Morgan remained still. She breathed slowly. The judge shouted. The bailiff hesitated. Peterson stared in awe. And through it all, Morgan Steele became more than a veteran in the gallery. She became a symbol, a force field around the values the courtroom had forgotten. No one moved. No one dared. And that pause, the pregnant silence, was the first rumble before the storm that would follow. The tension in courtroom 4B was now a living, breathing entity. Every tick of the clock, every whisper of papers being shuffled seemed amplified in the stale air. Judge Harrison Cole's face was purple with fury, veins pulsing, his gavel poised for another hammer strike. "I will not be disrespected. You will remove that." And that's when David Cho, the court clerk, felt the invisible barrier snap. The instinctive recognition, drilled into him during 4 years of service in the Marine Corps, screamed that something was dangerously wrong. He wasn't just looking at a courtroom dispute. He was witnessing an attempt to desecrate one of the nation's most sacred honors. David's fingers moved almost on autopilot, hands trembling with a mix of fear and adrenaline.
He reached for his phone beneath the desk, keeping it shielded from the judge's glare. One number flashed in his memory, a lifeline saved from years of training: Master Gunnery Sergeant Reyes, senior enlisted advisor at Naval Base Coronado. He whispered into the phone, "Sir, you won't believe this. It's happening right now. A veteran, Medal of Honor, Judge Cole, he's trying to confiscate it." There was a pause, silence on the other end of the line. Then a voice, deep, gruff, and commanding, broke through. "David, stay calm. Give me the address, courtroom number." David rattled off the details, his own heartbeat thundering in his ears. "Understood. Stay put. We're on our way. Do not engage the bailiff. Just stay calm." The line went dead, leaving David holding the phone like a lifeline that could not yet be thrown. But he didn't need to hear any more. Morgan Steele's eyes were still locked forward, calm, unwavering, yet beneath that serene surface raged the controlled storm of her own memories. She could feel the courtroom's energy like a physical pressure pressing in on her chest. Every movement, every order from the judge, every hesitant glance from the bailiff seemed disconnected from the weight of the metal she bore. And in her mind, the battlefield came alive again. She was back in the Helmand River Valley, dust choking her lungs, machine gun fire tearing the earth around her. 3 Marines critically wounded, pinned under relentless enemy fire. And she had made a choice, not to hide, not to calculate, not to survive alone, but to step into the kill zone and do the impossible. Her shoulder ached, still pulsing with phantom pain. She could feel it now as she sat under the cold fluorescent lights of a courthouse. Shrapnel had torn her uniform. Blood had slicked her gloves. Her lungs burned with exertion. And yet, each Marine she had saved remained alive because she had refused evacuation. Her hands remembered the frantic rhythm of tourniquet and wound dressing, the way she had dragged men to cover with a force that left her own body bleeding, bruised, and battered. The bailiff shifted again, tentative, as if the weight of the past and present collided. He saw not a quiet woman in the gallery, but a living embodiment of valor. He knew instinctively that his hand hovering near her shoulder was not a trivial act. It was a potential violation of everything sacred in the uniformed stances. Outside, at Naval Base Coronado, Master Gunnery Sergeant Reyes ignited a chain reaction. Within minutes, a call went straight to the base commander, a 2-star Rear Admiral, who froze mid-briefing.
"Sir, we have a problem," Reyes growled, voice low, lethal with authority. "A Medal of Honor recipient is being held in contempt by a civilian judge downtown. The judge is attempting to confiscate the medal. Immediate intervention required." By the time the message reached Admiral Thompson, 4-star commander of the Pacific Fleet, the gears of the Navy had shifted into overdrive. A flurry of orders cascaded down the chain of command. Protocol was thrown out the window. Courtesy and process were abandoned. One immutable fact mattered above all. Morgan Steele could not be disrespected. Not today, not here. The courtroom itself seemed oblivious to the storm brewing just outside. Judge Cole was pacing, his voice rising, every syllable an attempt to assert dominance over history, over valor, over a woman whose very life had rewritten what courage meant. "Do you hear me, ma'am? This is a courtroom, not a military parade. Remove that trinket immediately." Morgan didn't answer. She breathed slowly, measured, every inhale a counter to the chaos in the room. The metal pressed against her chest, but it was more than weight. It was a testament. It was memory. It was honor. And then, a shift in the room. The sound of black dress shoes tapping in perfect cadence against the tile floor. It was subtle at first, almost unnoticeable against the hum of fluorescent lights. But as the taps grew louder, the air in the courtroom changed. Every head lifted, every whisper froze. The doors at the back of the courtroom burst open, not with fury, not with chaos, but with precision and inevitability. There, framed against the doorway, stood Admiral Thompson, 4 silver stars glittering on his uniform. At his side, Rear Admiral Jacobs, the base commander, and Master Gunnery Sergeant Reyes in full dress blues, accompanied by a silent phalanx of senior officers. Time froze. Judge Cole's mouth opened, then closed. Words failed him. The bailiff stepped back, as if struck by invisible lightning. The courtroom, once alive with petty indignation, now trembled with institutional authority. Morgan felt a calm wash over her. She did not rise, she did not speak. She simply looked, her eyes steady, as the true weight of the moment descended. The Medal of Honor, gleaming against her chest, became a beacon of righteousness, drawing every eye, every heartbeat, every unspoken acknowledgement toward its rightful bearer. Admiral Thompson walked slowly down the aisle, the cadence of his steps deliberate, commanding, impossible to ignore. The room was silent, but not merely quiet. The air itself seemed to bend around his presence. When he stopped before Morgan, he did something so unexpected, so shattering in its ceremonial authority, that the courtroom collectively exhaled. He saluted her. Not a mere nod, not a courtesy wave, a full, rigid, precise salute, the kind reserved for the Medal of Honor alone. His gaze held hers, piercing, acknowledging, honoring the legacy she carried on her chest. Master Chief Petty Officer Steele, it is an honor to see you again. The words reverberated through the room like thunder. Judge Cole's gavel remained frozen midair, a monument to impotence. Every lawyer, every clerk, every civilian in the gallery could feel the tectonic shift in authority. Thompson continued, and as he did, the battlefield returned in vivid cinematic clarity for everyone in the room. On October 17, 2012, in the Helmand River Valley, Morgan's platoon was ambushed. 3 Marines critically wounded in open fire. Morgan left her position of cover, sprinted across 50 meters under machine gun fire, shielded the first Marine, applied a tourniquet, and dragged him to cover. She ran back. Shrapnel tore through her uniform, blood soaking her gloves. The second Marine needed extraction. She engaged enemy fire with her sidearm, suppressing a machine gun nest. And then the third, still pinned. Her shoulder ached from a gunshot, but she ignored it. Every action measured, every life prioritized, every ounce of courage drawn from reserves she didn't know existed. The courtroom gasped. The judge, the bailiff, the public, even young Peterson, all felt the weight of those actions. The air was thick with disbelief. This was not a story from a history book. It was alive, raw, visceral, and it was happening inside their courtroom, all over again, in memory and reality simultaneously. Your Honor, Admiral Thompson said, turning slightly toward Judge Cole, this decoration is the Medal of Honor. Its wear is not only authorized, it is protected by federal law. Any attempt to remove it is not just an insult, it is a violation of that law. You were about to commit an unlawful act. Judge Cole's face turned from red to a ghostly white. The gavel dropped to the desk, useless. The authority he had wielded moments ago crumbled beneath the weight of history, legality, and truth. Morgan finally allowed herself the smallest exhale. She did not speak, did not gloat, did not revel. She had witnessed enough death, enough chaos, enough life-and-death moments to know that victory was silent, dignity was quiet, and courage did not need applause. And yet, in that silence, in the frozen awe of the courtroom, every person present understood the truth. Morgan Steele's honor could not be questioned. Her actions demanded respect. Her medal demanded recognition. The doors closed behind the arriving naval officers, but their presence was eternal in the room, like a living monument to valor. The battle was no longer the judge against the veteran. It was truth against ignorance, history against arrogance, honor against petty authority. And as the tensions settled into a quiet electric hum, the first stage of vindication had begun, but the storm was far from over. The courtroom seemed suspended in time. The echo of Admiral Thompson's voice still lingered, calm yet commanding, carrying the weight of law, history, and honor. Judge Harrison Cole's gavel sat uselessly on his desk, his own authority crumbling under the reality of Morgan Steele's legacy. But the final act had not yet unfolded. The lesson, the vindication, and the legacy were still waiting to be delivered. Morgan rose slowly from her seat. The courtroom lights reflected off the Medal of Honor resting on her chest, casting a pale blue glow across the polished floors. She did not raise her voice, did not shout, yet when she spoke, every ear in the room leaned forward. "Your Honor," she began, her tone steady, resonant, and unwavering, "I respect the law. I have dedicated my life to it, to the men and women who uphold it, and to the nation it serves. Standards matter, but wisdom matters more. Authority without understanding is nothing but arrogance." The words fell like deliberate strikes, measured but devastating. Judge Cole's face, once flushed with fury, now betrayed confusion, shame, and faintly comprehension. The bailiff, the lawyers, the public, they all felt the seismic shift. Morgan's statement wasn't a lecture, it was a demonstration of moral clarity distilled from decades of service, sacrifice, and survival. She let a beat of silence stretch, allowing the room to absorb the weight of what had been said. Then she spoke again, this time invoking a moment that few could ever imagine. "I remember the Oval Office," she said, her eyes distant, as if seeing across years and miles. "I remember the president fastening this medal around my neck. I remember the silence, the reverence, the solemn understanding of what it means to carry the honor of lives saved and lost." The courtroom held its breath. Even Judge Cole could not look away. Morgan's memories were vivid, almost tangible. Flashes of polished wood, historic chandeliers, the weight of the nation's gratitude pressing into her shoulders alongside the medal. She recalled the precise words of the citation, the faces of the families of those she had saved and those she could not. The Medal of Honor was not an ornament. It was a testament, a burden, and a promise. Admiral Thompson stepped slightly closer, though not interrupting. His presence alone was a shield, but the calm intensity in his eyes mirrored the respect Morgan had earned in every theater of combat, on every ship deck, and in every briefing room. He did not need to speak. The silence carried more authority than any gavel or judicial decree. Morgan continued, her voice soft but charged with weight. "Your Honor, when I was in Afghanistan, 3 Marines lay wounded in the open under a storm of fire. Their lives depended on the decisions I made, the courage I summoned. I faced enemy fire not once, not twice, but 3 times to ensure they survived. Every action I took, every injury I suffered was for them, not for medals, not for recognition, but for the promise we make to each other when we wear the uniform." Judge Cole shifted uncomfortably. The words, combined with the unflinching display of authority surrounding her, left him trembling. His chest rose and fell rapidly, a man confronted not with law, but with the raw human truth of valor, the kind of truth no courtroom manual could dictate. Morgan's eyes swept across the gallery. She saw young Peterson, the sailor she had come to support, his jaw tight, his eyes shining with awe. She saw the other citizens, the clerks, the lawyers, all suddenly aware that this wasn't just a legal matter. This was a lesson in honor, a masterclass in courage, a confrontation between petty authority and the immutable truth of service. And then came the final emotional twist. Morgan raised her voice just enough for clarity, the cadence shifting between slow, deliberate diction and rapid, rhythmic emphasis, a verbal reenactment of battlefield tempo. "The Medal of Honor is not a necklace, not a trinket, not a symbol of personal pride. It is the lives of 4 Marines I saved. It is the cost of 2 I could not. It is the promise of every man and woman who serves that no sacrifice will be forgotten, no valor dismissed. And today, in this room, your ignorance tried to erase that. But honor cannot be erased. Respect cannot be fabricated. Courage cannot be ordered into submission. It must be witnessed, it must be acknowledged, and it must be protected." Every eye in the courtroom followed her every word. Some gasped, some nodded, a few could only stare in stunned disbelief. Judge Cole looked as if he had aged decades in the span of a few minutes. The realization was bitter, inescapable, and profound. He had tried to wield power without understanding, and power without understanding was meaningless. Admiral Thompson's hand moved slightly, indicating the bailiff should step back. Morgan's presence, combined with the Admiral's authority, created a protective cordon around truth itself. No petty order, no legal technicality could now touch what was sacred. The judge's threat had dissolved in the face of overwhelming respect, law, and lived history. Morgan's voice softened slightly as she delivered her final reflection. I have witnessed death, chaos, and unspeakable suffering. I have carried comrades on my back, dragged men through fire, and faced impossible choices. But in every moment, the measure of a person, the measure of authority, is how it recognizes those who have given everything to protect others. Today, this courtroom, this city, this nation is being reminded of that truth. The room was utterly silent for a heartbeat, and then a low murmur spread. The attorneys, the clerks, even the young sailor began to comprehend the scale of what had occurred. Morgan's lesson was not just for Judge Cole, it was for anyone who would underestimate the weight of honor, the cost of courage, the necessity of respect. Admiral Thompson's voice finally filled the room, firm yet calm. Master Chief Steele, your actions, your legacy, and this medal are beyond reproach. Any attempt to challenge that would be a violation of federal law and a moral failure of the highest order. This courtroom and anyone present now understands what true courage looks like. Judge Cole finally lowered his gaze. Words failed him. The gavel lay forgotten on the desk. The contempt charge evaporated into thin air. The ticket against young Peterson was dismissed in a gesture of poetic justice. The courtroom, for once, had witnessed truth in its purest form. Morgan allowed herself a quiet, measured smile. The storm had passed. Justice had not only been restored, but illuminated. The young sailor's eyes met hers, filled with gratitude and awe. The spectators, too, felt it, a connection that transcended legal statutes or personal authority. And then, as the adrenaline faded, Morgan's mind drifted briefly to another memory. The Oval Office, the president fastening the medal around her neck, the hushed reverence, the weight of history pressing onto her shoulders. That moment, decades of service, all the sacrifices, all the pain, all the victories, it converged here, in a courtroom that had forgotten the meaning of honor, only to have it restored in full, undeniable clarity. Outside, news spread quietly, but inevitably. Veteran communities celebrated the vindication. Judge Cole faced scrutiny, censure, and mandatory training in military and cultural competency. Policies were updated. A small seed of understanding was planted in a system that had almost lost sight of what mattered. Morgan returned to her life quietly, her presence a reminder of courage and moral clarity. Weeks later, she shopped at the base commissary. Judge Cole approached her, humbler, stripped of arrogance, offering a sincere apology. Master Chief Steele, I wanted to apologize again. There is no excuse for my ignorance. Morgan studied him, weighing truth against humility. What matters now, she said calmly, is what you do. Actions matter more than words. I've heard about the new training program at the courthouse. That's a start. He nodded, relief flickering across his face, and walked away. Morgan pushed her cart down the aisle, the Medal of Honor resting against her chest, a symbol of lives, courage, and honor that no petty order could ever diminish. And now, as we reflect on this incredible story, remember, Silent Heroes exists to honor the bravery, courage, and sacrifice of all veterans and heroes who face impossible odds every day.
If this story inspired you, if it reminded you of the sacrifices made in silence, we ask a small favor. Please subscribe to Silent Heroes, leave a like, and comment below where in the world you're watching from. Your support helps us continue to tell these unforgettable stories and ensure no hero's bravery is ever forgotten. Morgan Steele's story is not just one woman's triumph. It is a testament to every act of courage, every choice made under fire, and every life protected at an unimaginable cost. Let us carry that respect forward and let her legacy and the lesson she taught a courtroom full of bystanders resonate in all of us.